Good day and welcome to this week's Topical Talk. And today, Kate, we're talking about
social media and the transgender agenda.
right, which, I mean, folks might not be aware it is such an agenda, but you really do feel, we both feel it is.
Yeah, it's a big one, especially on social media and especially aimed towards young people. It is a massive part of the political agenda in a lot of countries overseas. Like we say, in America, whatever is happening there often leaks into South Africa. It's a big thing there. It's a massive part of just everyday life now, in advertising and social media, absolutely everywhere. It's not something that when I was younger was slightly hidden or not talked about. Now it is very open and it's sort of very in your face.
Yeah. And it's true what they say, when America sneezes, we catch a cold.
Yeah.
Which is really what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so today we're talking specifically about one or two folk again.
Yeah, specifically, so in the past couple of episodes we've discussed sort of hiding truth and this false narrative or this false expectation that a lot of the topics we've discussed brings, and then the reality behind it, and about all the different topics. So today we're talking about sort of the way that society and social media is portraying transgenderism, the reality of it, what it is like to transition, not just in terms of your appearance, but actually medically transitioning with hormones and surgeries and things like that. So the first person we're talking about is Dylan Mulvaney. If you haven't heard about him, he is a very influential TikTok transgender influencer. So he was originally born a man and has transitioned to a woman, kept the same name, has recently had surgery done on his jaw to make it slightly slimmer, so that he looks slightly more feminine, but other than that, nothing else has changed. He hasn't done anything else physically. To give you an idea of how influential he is, he has got 10.6 million followers on TikTok, which is the main social media platform for young people today. He's on YouTube as well, but he's had sponsors and received money and products from massive companies overseas, some of them to do with like women's periods, some of them to do with like beer and things like that. That didn't go so well. The American public didn't really want him involved in their beer on their beer cans. But so he's extremely influential, and his main thing is that he makes transitioning and being a transgender person seem like such a lovely, fluffy sort of thing. So there's two videos that we'll link in the description box below, but he essentially makes becoming a woman a bit of a satire. Everything that he does is, women only wear high heels, we like wearing pink all the time, we cry all the time, we're too scared to send scary emails to people, stuff like that. When we go out into nature, we run away from bugs and stuff like that, but it's all in the name of I'm finally a woman, I get to be a woman, and it's all light and fluffy and exciting. And he has never mentioned any negative side effects to being a transgender person.
So I mean, you just as a young woman looking at that, how does that make you feel, the way he portrays women?
I'm quite offended, to be honest. He runs out into nature, and the second he sees a bug, he falls to the ground and screams and runs away. And he talks about how often he's crying during the day. He has this whole. He became famous by posting on TikTok every day. Day 1 of being a girl, day 2 of being a girl, and he changes nothing in his life except taking any sort of satirical view of what a woman is supposed to be and runs with that, and he has no actual experience of what it's like to be a woman in the modern world.
So I mean, interestingly, he has this particular portrayal, and one can look at that and have a particular view. But the other person is this Chloe, young woman, Kate, and she's particularly interesting because she will give our listeners some of the insights and what I find interesting, the vulnerabilities as a young person, really from age 9, 10, 11, 12. In that sort of key transitional kind of change in a young woman's life. She gives us some unique insights there.
Yeah, definitely. So her name is Chloe Cole. We'll also put an interview with her in the description box, but if you just type her into YouTube, you can find lots of interviews with her, and she's been very brave. So when she was around 11, she said she didn't know anything about the transgender community. When she was 11, she got a cell phone. She managed to get a hold of social media, and that's where it was introduced to her, which is why we're discussing it now, because that is where your children and teenagers and young adults are getting the information. It's where they're learning about these things. So you can't hide from it. You have to have the conversations now while you can. So she got a hold of social media, discovered transgenderism. You'll see in the interview she struggled with quite a few different things in her life, and it was essentially what she says an identity issue. She was struggling with who she was. She didn't enjoy puberty. She related a little bit more to the boys. Her body wasn't developing the same as girls, and spoke to her parents about it, decided that she was a boy, and then medically began to transition. She got a double mastectomy when she was 15 years old, and then a year later when she was 16 regretted it, and then began to transition back to a woman, and now she's 19, 20 years old. She's discussing it openly on the internet. She's been attacked a lot for it because she's discussing the negative side effects that she had transitioning and being a transgender person. And one of the things she said, in this community that's supposed to be all about including other people, it's all about inclusion and love and loving one another for who you choose to be. But the second she decided to transition back to female, which is what she originally was, then that community turned away from her, wouldn't speak to her, said that she needs to stop spreading this information because it's going to stop other people from finding their true selves. And then she was very brave. She spoke in front of the American Congress as well, asking them to stop pursuing this this agenda because it's leaking into schools, it's leaking into what age someone can transition physically, medically. They're trying to get it to legally happen at a very young age, which is quite scary.
And I think why her journey is so significant is because she's now in her early 20s, I think.
Yeah, she's about 19, 20.
And then she's tracking back the journey perhaps over the last sort of 10 years. And she gives us what I found so interesting is that she spoke about being lonely. About being what we would have simply called and still call today is a young girl with athletic qualities. She was a little bit of a tomboy.
Yeah, she said slightly broader shoulders. Yeah, a bit taller than other girls.
Athletic, but even now she looks like a beautiful young person. And so it really was a struggle, which she spoke about feeling insecure. She struggled with her journey to puberty, which every young person goes through. And as you say, then she turned to the internet to try and find affirmation and this loneliness. And clearly, her parents were misunderstanding her.
Yeah, they were. So she spoke to them about it. But one of the things she said when they went to a doctor, so you kind of have to go through psychologists and doctors in order to transition. And she said that one of the things that a doctor, I don't know if it was a doctor or psychologist, said to her parents is that they could either have.
So he's a gender specialist.
Gender specialist.
So that's a doctor who now is supposed to be a specialist in this.
Yeah, who's supposed to know exactly what's happening. And he said to their parents that you can either have a happy, alive son or a suicidal or dead daughter.
A dead daughter.
A dead daughter. So that's sort of, she even admits in some of her interviews it wasn't fair to put that on her parents, and she also openly says she wasn't suicidal at that point.
No.
She says after transitioning she was, because she all of a sudden started to regret how she could no longer look feminine anymore. She couldn't dress up in a nice way, and there's just a lot of incorrect information, and even in medical professionals, which is quite scary and shows how the whole transgender debate and thing is it's controversial and it's dangerous.
So it seemed to me, Katie, you can clarify this for me. It seemed to me that her journey into the struggle of identity as a young person was what pretty much all of us go through. But then, and here's the thing, social media, she said, introduced the idea that I could be a boy.
Fully from social media. That's
from social media, she got this idea.
And she was 11 years old.
She was 11 years old, So that's why we're lifting up the social media reality in this conversation we need to have, because all of us, you'll recall as a parent, the vulnerable stages you went through, the loneliness that sometimes would have led to depression, or this. She talks about having no friends and not quite sort of understanding her body and where she fitted in. And so she turned to social media. That became her world. And I mean, that extreme link from searching for something to becoming transgender, that's a massive link.
It's a massive link, but she got
a massive jump. It's a huge jump.
She was helped through social media, and then she was pushed as well through different medical professionals and people in her life.
Which is a whole reality. So just back to the Bible, and Kate, because we said that this is pretty much a suppression of the truth. We know who we are. we know how to live, we know what right relationships are. And down in our passage, verse 28, which we didn't read last time, so we'll read it this time. Furthermore, since they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, he gave them over to a depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. It was an interesting one. Disobey their parents. They are senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of others or invite others. Yeah. And we've discovered this in this community, okay? Whether it's LGBTQ plus or this transgender community. What would you say?
Yeah, they are definitely aiming most their advertising and their conversation, the way they dress, the way they speak, all of their videos are aimed at bringing in young people and creating a community. And like what happened with Chloe is the second you turn against them or don't agree with them 100%, they kick you out of the community. But it's like, what it says there in those verses, that once you kind of commit yourself to it, God lets you get fully sucked in, and we can see that in people like Dylan Mulvaney. And he falls
he's totally convinced.
He's 100%
in his own mind.
100% in, but he's also being encouraged by the world around him. They had a TV special with him on it. He's got loads of influence now. But if you watch his videos carefully, you can kind of see those aspects of the gossip and the slanderers, and he attacks other people when he can. But it's always in this. He says things like when people are talking about him on the internet or writing articles that they shouldn't misgender him, and if they do, it should be illegal. But he immediately says, I don't know, that's just my opinion. Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't. But I think it should be illegal, which is a dangerous thing when you try and start to control the media's speech and what they can and can't say. So it's a big community. They kind of all start collecting with one another. It's not just transgender. They pull themselves into the LGBTQIA plus community as well. So it's really big.
And the struggle that Chloe had then was that she felt then that social media had lied to her.
Yes, so she would have seen someone like Dylan on the internet saying how happy they are after they transitioned and how everything is great, and their family doesn't accept them, but they have a new family in the transgender community. But she obviously discovered that wasn't necessarily the case.
So again, we're going to pick this up in our final one in the series next time, when we really talk about identity and self-worth and some of the things we can do to harm ourselves when we're going through these struggling seasons in life, particularly for young people. But right now, we want to sort of close off this session also in a very hopeful way, because we believe in the gospel transforms. There's tremendous hope for young people who start finding their identity, their worth, their value in Christ. Versus looking to social media. We understand it's difficult for parents, misunderstanding teenagers. Teenagers send out volatile messages. You will remember yourself. one of your occasions, your bad days. What did I call you? Your dialogue was like.
You called me acid rain.
Acid rain, and acid rain is that horrible rain that comes over from Europe, and it's collected pollution in the air and toxicity, and then it rains down on some, and we had one of those dialogues, didn't we? But we found a way through.
Yes,
so
it was funny.
It was funny in the end, not at the moment, at that time. So James chapter 1 says, and here's the thing for us as parents to think about with our young people in this journey, which we're not saying is easy at all, but it is possible, because loneliness, depression, that feeling as a young person is so real. You might remember it. And so social media is escapism. But we're encouraging, face this reality. James chapter 1 verse 19, my dear brothers, sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And isn't that it, Kate, how we can, what it means for a parent to sit and be present with a young person, and to begin to understand that identity, that loneliness, to have a voice, to not come down heavy on that child.
I think it's so important to kind of meet this young person where they're at, because, and I know people say it a lot, but the world today is not the same for a young person as it was, even just 5 to 10 years ago. So to meet them where they're at and to just listen to where they're at and have open, honest conversations about this sort of thing, to see where they're at, to see if they're struggling with something, talk to them about it. Don't just assume that you know how they're feeling because you felt a similar way once. It is very different, social media in the world, and try and understand things from their perspective and ask questions and then just listen. Sometimes that's enough to help a young person feel seen or heard.
Because I mean, for a young person today, Kate, they would say that social media world, for some of them, it's more real than the world we're sitting. This world, that world is more real to them.
100%, because they can feel, you can always find a community on social media where you feel accepted. Whether that's in the transgender, the LGBTQIA plus community, or it's a gaming community because people at school don't game so much, or you have a favorite book series and no one at school understands you or speaks to you about it, and you find people on social media who do. So it's for a lot of kids, it's their main world, and the rest of it doesn't really matter so much.
So we're encouraging you to be courageous. If your child is spending excessive time on social media, then ask, engage in this conversation lovingly and respectfully, and take a long-term view. These things are not just going to be sorted out overnight.
No, definitely not.
But I'm thinking of Chloe, when you'll see in the clip, look at it when she sits before Congress and she says this. She's asking for change, and she says, please let me be your final warning. So the struggle she's had to go through. So let's hear that as parents. Let's heed the warning and rather engage in the conversation. We'll catch up to you next time. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good week.